Howdy, everybody. I'm Patrick, or the Constant Way, and we're coming back after a long hiatus. Several patches now down the line, a bunch of new heroes released to revisit our Gods of Judgment series. I've brought on my good friend and compatriot, part of the playtest group, Robby here. Robby, how about you introduce yourself to everyone?
Hey, I'm Robby. I go by Robby on the Discord. I've been playing since Patrick got me into this game in version 1 back in the pre-2020 days. So happy to participate in this round of feedback and intros.
Very cool. All right, so without further ado, we're just going to jump right on into the overview of Ista. Ista's playstyle, never say die and strike true. We're going to go through the divine gifts, talk about what we think about them before moving on to our champions, and some sample warbands that you might consider when you're playing Ista. So, starting from the top, her warband bonus. Heroes that resurrect adjacent to the refugee do so at full health. Robby, what do we think of this one?
I think you're going to see a lot of this, but we think it's good. It's good, not great. I think a way to think about warband bonuses is how often are you going to use them on a game-to-game basis. And if things are going well for you, you might never lose a hero. On In an average game, though, I'd say you're probably going to lose like 2 to 3 heroes across the game, right? So, what do heroes come back at when they don't have this bonus? It's 5 less health. Uh, it also happens to cost a fate and an action to heal yourself for 5, right? So kind of think of it as saving yourself a fate and an action for every hero that has died. Do you think that value changes from hero to hero, Patrick?
Oh yeah. So as we'll see in the champions, like Ista's got a bunch of elf champions, and there's nothing worse than an elf coming back on like 8 health and then just getting farmed for another soul immediately after resurrecting. So I think this warband bonus is good in that it sort of helps prevent that happening.
Yeah, and just a reminder, warband bonuses work on non-champions too. So you're dying to play Victor, but you're sick of him getting one shot after he dies, and resurrects. Maybe you want to try him out in Ista.
There you go. There's a good idea. Although I don't know how happy I still will be with all this demon summoning, but maybe she'll get over it. So moving on to her sacred artifact, the Restoration Potion. This is a newly changed in patch 2.4 zero fate to purchase, but you have to spend an action and a fate to actually use it, which lets you heal target friendly adjacent model for 10 health. This replaces the Healing Surge magical artifact that's normally in your deck, and you only get to use it once. Robby, we think this is good, right?
Yeah, anytime you can get a 2 fate item for 0 fate that you maybe spend a fate later to use, that's saved you at least a fate, if not 2. I think the value really is that you don't have to buy it when you need to use it. You can buy it in advance, and it costs you nothing. Um, I think that this is maybe one of the bigger hurdles as you're learning Ista, because I just see uh, Ista is a very common god because people start out with it, but I've just watched a ton of games where people forget to have a plan for how to get this onto a hero on turn 1. Um, I think that the one of the better parts of this gift is that the threat of it, not necessarily that it you know, always gets used in the most optimal way. Your opponent almost has to force you to use this so that they can finally kill a hero, right? So that's probably the best part about it for me.
Yeah, and like what you can do is just make sure that the hero you want to carry that potion around starts base to base or adjacent to the effigy turn 1, and their very first action is simply to shop, buy it from the effigy, and then you've got that and don't have to worry about it the rest of the game. When we get into the
Yeah.
warbands, we'll talk through maybe some of the considerations about who should be your potion bearer. But all in all, I'd say this is a very solid artifact to bring to the table.
Yeah, and I think I want to caveat this with patch 2.4 did just come out. There's also a change in there that shrines allow item purchases, the center line shrines. So I could see someone maybe having a plan where they're going to really try hard to get that shrine in the first 2 turns, and that's when they're going to buy this potion. I think that I would probably lean towards the tried and true wisdom that you just imparted, and just buy it from the effigy turn 1. But there's more options in the game now with
Watch
the
out
center
for
on the
that
shrine.
stone form Donrigar taking the center and just saying, nope, this is my shrine, and oops, now it's my potion too. Cool. So moving on to the effigy power, it's Celestial Gift. Friendly champions of Ista heroes can remove one condition, heal one health, gain nimble, and fly until the end of their next activation. What are we thinking here? I mean, we've got it down as good. Now, this isn't like a Bruellen damage verse or a Tomas, all your conditions just work. It might seem a little more subtle. Why do we think this is good?
I mean, I'd say each individual piece there is not all that powerful, but the flexibility is where you get the get to a good, almost great rating. Like I'd say this is great if you could engineer every game to make each one of these benefits be super impactful. However, I think over the course of several games, you'll just find that you have to use it when say two of the aspects of it will be really important to you. The nimble and fly I think is fairly consistent to get value out of, either to get over some troublesome terrain or get out of a pinch if you're just getting ganged up on by a bunch of heroes. Um, it I think the avatar bonus is really almost part and parcel with this. So what does that do again?
Yeah, so if Isabel's the avatar, friendly heroes within 2 hexes of Isabel heal another 1 health after Celestial Gift is called, and Isabel permanently gets fly and nimble. So here, I mean, I think sort of like what you were talking about, it's really about how can you maximize each individual element of these buffs, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it lands in the okay category just because it's only, largely this is an effect for Isabel and Isabel alone. The extra heal is a very kind of nice to have kind of thing, right? I think you took the um, probably the worst part of the effigy power and amped that up a little bit with this avatar bonus. Um, and the flying nimble is going to be, potentially you know, clutch for you on like turn 5 in a game, and Isabel, charges over the enemy lines and gets the last hero down. But I think game to game, it's just going to be kind of convenient. I think nimble's probably the most relevant part on average, right? Is just being able to walk away. She might be your soul harvester, and they start to get her low, and you can just have to recall and bank. I mean, simple as that.
Yeah. So all around,
So
pretty solid kit. Nothing that's blown our mind, but a good toolbox to work with.
yeah, thematically I like it a lot. It's just the power level is none of these are really in the great category.
Fair enough. Cool. So let's go ahead and dive into the champion pool that Ista has available to her. Now remember, anybody can get that warband bonus to respawn with the FG at full health, but these are the folks who can carry your sacred artifact or benefit from the FG power. So we've grouped them by sort of, or distributed them across the sort of primary class that each of these champions represents. So we've got our tanks, we've got our melee damage dealers, and our assassins and bruisers, ranged damage dealers and shooters and snipers, our more utilities, sort of controllers and enhancers, and of course our soulless and soul gazers. So what are we looking at here in this distribution? It seems fairly even in terms of nothing's too skewed. But what are the elements that stand out amongst Ista's champion pool to you, Robby?
I think number one is durability. You've got durability obviously in the three tanks at the top, but even as you go down the list, Brock and Barnascus are very durable bruisers. Um, Yasmin and Maltique are durable in their own way in that they have access to um, self healing, or Maltique has access to defense from magic. The control enhancer class has a bunch of healing as well as res. And then, I mean, Svetlana could almost be in that tank category, right? When she's getting attacked in melee. Um,
Well,
I
especially
think
because
that,
like she can just have you not worry about monsters, right? She just makes the monsters their problem. So that can be a way to crack tanks, as if you can shove monsters into your opponent's tanks just because they can do so much damage, and that doesn't care.
right. I mean, the one thing that I see a little lacking in the champion pool is there's not a lot of tricks. I mean, you just kind of described one of the main ones with Svetlana is just pushing monsters around. You've got Lori Bella. I mean, her hand grenade is amazing. It's like one of the, uh, she was one of the earlier retail models to come out after the Kickstarter that really started the kind of avalanche of tricks that have since now I think mostly made their way from version 1 to version 2. But other than those two models, I don't see a lot of trickery going on, right? And so
Yeah,
that's where I might start to look to non-champs.
yeah, it makes sense. So, we've got three different categories that we think you might most commonly feel compelled to reach for a non-ISTA champion, starting with, like you said, the movement utility. So we've called out Cavardo and Sharn here. What do you think makes them stand out as the choices for, movement utility heroes that you might bring in?
Yeah, I mean, there's now several options here in this category, but I think that Cavardo and Sharn make sense because they're leaning back into the durability that we talked about at the top. Both agility 4, both have resistance 1. Um, so
Two on
I
Sharn,
think that
right?
they can. Yeah, yeah. Sorry. And they both kind of lean into the brick aspect, right? I think they can be a part of the Ista kind of clump and not stand out as a weak point, right? Whereas like Styx is another movement utility hero, but lacking the res and the health pools that Cavardo and Sharn start with, I think that he wouldn't fit in as well. Um, I think on the melee band backup category, what I think one really interesting thing to talk about here is like why are we talking about melee band backup? You've got a pretty good category of bruisers up top. um, is there something that you're looking for that maybe Barnascus, Brock, or Nephany are not offering?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll admit I've got my bias. I'm a big melee beat face kind of player, and so I always like to err on the side of more punch face than less punch face. And really, when you look at the damage available, especially the melee damage available to the Ista champions, you're leaning hard on Brock for any sort of res cracking, right? Like Barney doesn't do well against a bunch of res. Nephany bounces off of res. I mean, really have to like buy her an armor shredder and hope to buffer and that she can crit a whole bunch to do that. And so I like having sort of this melee band backup in case someone really doesn't want to deal with Brock or is bringing something that you're really going to want to have that punchiness to get through. You can lean on some of those ranged heroes to do a little bit of armor shredding for you. Astariel has that built-in armor shredder. Maltique can deal true damage. Yasmin has that built-in armor shredder. So you do have some options for getting through tanks and other res even if Brock's banned and you're not bringing a real backup. But I mean, for me, it's a comfort thing. Um, but like,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I usually like to get my res cracking from the melee guys. But if you look at the shooter sniper category, I mean, it's definitely a play style you could go down, right? If you've got an Astariel or a Maltique backing up Brock, and Brock gets banned, well, maybe you can live with the kind of chip damage that Nephany and Barnascus apply to set up the kills for Astariel or Maltique.
yeah, for sure.
I think
Now,
Yorgoth's an interesting one here.
yeah.
Um,
What's going on with Yorgoth here? Why is he here? Because I feel like he maybe clashes a little bit with like that level 2 priority. If you're bringing Brock, like that dude wants his level 2. Yorgoth really wants his level 2. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he and Thorgar both bring the health pools, so it's nice to have a place to put your healing resources. Um, I think I'm going out on a limb here by suggesting that you could maybe play Yorgoth without prioritizing his level 2 if Brock's still on the table, right? It's just that it's going to have to come more naturally on like a turn 2-3 hero kill. Um, but what he can do in the meantime is set kills up with a very reliable knockdown, right? At level 1, he rolls 3 dice. If for each hit that comes up, he can knock down an adjacent enemy model. That's a very reliable single model knockdown, right? And if you're lucky, it could end up being 2 or 3. I think that Brock, Nephany, Astariel, um, all can tee off. I should not forget to mention Lori Bella. can all tee off off of a
Get those
knockdown, right?
spring-loaded procs, yeah.
So I think we're both being a little bold in putting him on this list because I don't think either of us have put Yorgoth in an Ista warband. Although I do believe second place at Warfare Weekend had Yorgoth and Ista. So we're not totally going out on a limb here.
Yep, no, he
Um,
did well.
yeah.
And then like
So
soulless. What are we thinking about our soulless backups? We've called them band backups.
yeah, I mean it's an interesting one because I think that you could very easily just go with Saiyan and Svetlana if you're really wanting to have two Soul Gazers and always be able to get at least one on the table. Um, but I think Cruel and Zyvera deserve mentioning. Cruel is a durable Soul Gazer once he gets the soul, right? He gains a res. He also outputs more damage. I think that if you're trying to play kind of an outlast strategy because your models just never die, Cruel can be an interesting grab because those kinds of strategies can be weak to the opponent getting up a lead on you and you not being able to pull it back through kills because you kind of need them to come to you. Cruel can pull that soul off them with one damage from his magic attack, right?
And
Um,
that's the
Zyvera,
that's the part that I almost don't want to put out in the world, right? Is because if you bring both Kroll and Saiyan, you've got two soul strippers in your warband, and oh my gosh, having played against it in to an extreme, it is brutal and it is very powerful. So definitely worth mentioning. But Zyvera here, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, just to add to that last point, I think by putting Cruel and Saiyan in the same warband, you could actually encourage them to ban a Soul Chaser still because it is so obnoxious to play against a warband that's trying to lean into the soul removal process. Yeah, Zyvera is an honorable mention there. I think that there was a point where Ista, Gamer Dad was in the online leagues terrorizing people with an Ista warband with Zyvera. Um, I think the big thing there is that she deals in trading health for either health to other models on your side or damage to the enemy models, and you've got so much healing that like a, a 5 health point swing on one of your models doesn't really matter that much because you can just replace it. Um, and then her level 2 is just super annoying, right? Diminish will causes models to need an extra combat maneuver to trigger their or extra combat maneuver symbol to trigger their combat maneuvers, which can actually help remove a problem for you, which is burst damage, right? For Kira's coming in and trying to blow up your model. Well, now he needs 3 combat maneuvers to do it. Also, just makes it harder to pull the brick apart because now it requires 2 maneuvers and, to push a model 1 hex. So
Fazil
um,
really doesn't like Zyvera.
yeah, the last mention there is kind of like how Cruel and Sand combo well together. Uh, Zyvera and Svetlana would be an interesting pair because both of those models can actually soul harvest twice in one turn. So this soul game is absolutely alive while either one of those models is on the table.
Yeah. So some cool options there. Very solid pool of durable, tanky, healy champions, and a little splash of some tricks maybe to consider if you're looking at some non-champions. So we're going to roll on into our warbands, starting out with our 3v3 blind pick. This is you're just starting out with the game. You've maybe bought the core box and then picked up another hero, something like that. Uh, we're starting out with a fairly durable warband in Marcus, Brock, and Isabel. What's this warband trying to do here, Robbie?
I think, like we talked about a moment ago, that you're just very durable. Um, Brock and Isabel both have level up abilities that increase the difficulty to kill them. Right? They come back from 0 health to 1 health the first time that happens in a turn. So what you can do with that durability is kind of camp on the shrines and soul pits, and win kind of a slow game. Um, I think that Brock, in his backswing ability, can potentially close out a game with an effigy kill. Now in 3v3 mode, you cannot charge an effigy, so you do kind of have to set that up in advance. But you park a Brock next to an effigy, and he's getting at least a soul's worth of damage off of it. Um, so I like the ability to have kind of a closer in the 3v3 format, and that's how I would head down. What what do you think? Is that a reasonable strategy? I mean, I don't think you've got the burst here to just be trying to blow people off the table.
I mean, if you get a Marcus knockdown followed up by a Brock, or even a spicy Retribution Isabel rolling all those smites, maybe you've got a little
Yeah,
bit more
sure.
punch. But no, I mean, I think like you said, this is a warband that wins by marching up the table, being really durable, holding important points like soul pits, and then just having enough attrition pressure to maybe even push past that and just walk up to an effigy and tear it down, or just keep grinding away at enemy heroes. So I think that durability is really going to help out with your board presence, and that's one way you effectively win the game. But if we're looking over at like fate economy, how we earn fate, how we spend fate, um, what are we looking at for this warband here?
I mean, I think, like we were saying, the board presence should allow you to be on the shrines and competing for that source of fate as a fate generator. But just none of these heroes really demand fate for any of their priority active abilities. So I think what fate you get, you're going to be able to spend on rerolls, healing yourself. I mean, Isabel by at level 1 can heal for 3. Um, you combine that with a self heal, and now she's healing for 8 with 2 actions. So that's probably where I would look to spend the fate. Um, in terms of
Critical
levels and
rerolls on
items,
Soul Harvest because you're dealing with Soul Harvest 4 maximum here.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're probably rerolling a soul harvest every turn on 3v3, right? Because the soul pits are just so close. Um, like we just mentioned, levels and items. You're going to invest items because you don't have the fate abilities. So a defensive item I think could go a long way here. Agility boots on Marcus, or a glyph of warding even on Isabel.
Good stuff. And then, I mean, monsters, we can deal with it with, we've got Brock, right? Like, if you really
Yeah,
need to, Isabel can go ret, but this is a category we're not too concerned about, yeah?
right.
Cool. All right. Well, that's a pretty straightforward threes blind pick warband. We'll step it on up now to fives. For this selection, we've gone with some heroes from the starter box, plus just an additional 3 heroes that you would buy off the creature cast store separately from that starter box. So we've continued to bring our Marcus, Brock, and Isabel. We've tossed in Alandir and Donragar, who are also in that starter box, and then rounding us out with Nephany and Svetlana. So we've got some additional spice here. What does this do to our win condition?
I think the Svetlana ad is really upping your ability to win a slow control game on souls. And then the Elodie and Nephany ads are allowing you to like finish off heroes that are low, right? Um, if a common response to a hero taking, a hero, an activation worth of damage might be to back up and self heal. Alandir shooting 6 hexes and lighting them on fire can either finish it off or set up the kill for Nephany, who can just fly over your terrain and enemy models. So I like this warband's tool set at pulling off a kill as well. On board presence, I think the fact that you've got 2 tanks here, is that something that you're looking to actually use on the table, or are you just kind of covering, say, for a Marcus ban?
Yeah, I mean, I think personally depends a bit on the matchup. But there are definitely some warbands that I would put both Marcus and Donregar on the table for. Like if you've got, someone not with a lot of burst, maybe not even someone with a lot of range, dropping something like a Marcus, Brock, Isabel, Donregar, Svetlana in their face is just the worst brick for them to have to try and chip through. So, I think that there's an opportunity to put both tanks on the table as you want, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think if you can target out their burst damage, that's a great point. That can be map dependent though, right? Like I think if you're going the double tank strategy, you probably want it to be kind of a condensed soul pit map, right? You like the currently map 7 has soul pits are like 4 hexes away from each other. That's a great map for kind of bunching up. But then I believe map 8 is the one with the soul pits that are like 10 hexes away from each other. That one's maybe not the best one to go double tank on.
Yeah, no, that's
Um,
fair.
I think on the fate economy side, it's we did carry forward the first 3 heroes. We already said don't require a lot of fate. We have then added in, I think, some pretty significant fate drawdowns with Alandir wanting to pop explosive shot off. I'd say pretty much anytime you can get 2 models on fire, explosive shot's going to be worth it. And then Nephany, her primary damage is her lightning storm fate ability, right? Um, so that's a challenge. I think another challenge with fate, it ties into the next one about levels and items, is that your turn 1 item buy, Brock, Alandir, and Nephany all really want items. So that is one downside of the warband we constructed here.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I think
what
you're gonna just have to plan that out, right? So, like, if I'm looking at it, what I'm probably gonna do is give Brock that first monster kill if I can, get him to level 2, get him his Vorpal Blade, make him happy, and then maybe like turn 3 when a monster respawns, I'm gonna go have Neff clean it up so that she can pick up a utility item. Maybe it's an armor shredder, maybe it's a hunter's knife, um, and some stability or something like that. But sort of use her because even if she has to sort of run off to the side to go deal with a monster, she can get right back into the fight with how fast she is. So, it's
yeah,
definitely
yeah, I
something
think
you
I
have to
would be
think about,
leaning.
though.
I think I'd be leaning the Brock level as well, particularly if you see any res 2 across the board, right? The quicker you can get to Brock's molten metal ability at level 3, the better.
For sure.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think you just kind of covered monster hunting, right? The Brock's got you covered. The the only time you're not thinking about killing monsters with Brock is if you really need him to kill to be saved for killing a hero. And at that point, um, you've got Nephany as backup. Nephany with the hunter's knife will absolutely destroy most monsters. And then we call it monster hunting, but monster control is a very valid thing as well. And Svetlana can just make the monster someone else's problem. Um, and along the way, maybe crit them for 7 damage with a monster swing. So I like that a lot. Um, as far as bands go, what do you think the band target would be in this warband?
I mean, again, it depends a bit, right, on what they're bringing to the table, but I would expect that Brock would be a fairly common ban. But I know Svetlana and Isabel have done terrible things to people, and so they might have a preference to take out one of them. But even then, like Alandir can be a terror, especially if they're really reliant on a lot of healing. So I think it's actually a pretty diverse. You'll probably see a pretty diverse set of bands against you. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean that this is kind of my favorite kind of warband. I love a warband that could force like 4 to 5 priority bands because I mean there's a lot of and maybe not a lot of, but there's definitely some warbands that I have played where I would still look at Dawnregard as a band because I need to be able to put there's so much beef and healing on here that I need to be able to put attacks into the model that I need to kill, and redirect makes that a huge problem. So yeah, I like that a lot. I think maybe the most glaring, with a ban, I'm often looking to try and like at least get rid of something almost entirely that they can do. So Alandir is a prominent target for that, right? If you take Alandir out, this warband does not really do anything at ranged. And then Svetlana, I think, with Isabel being a soul harvest for your soul harvest ability, is going to take a huge step back with the Svetlana ban. So
Yeah.
yeah, good warband. I think the bands are varied, and it's going to be a different experience each time you bring it to the table.
Anything in particular we're wanting to ban out, watch out for from our opponent? Like my first thought is like a Zonia, just because of burst. But what do you think?
Uh, Zonia, I like a Zim ban just because you've got the 2 elves there, and Brock certainly does not like being frozen just because he has so many attacks. Uh, those are kind of the big ones off the top of my head. I think depending on how folks are playing this on the table, Cavardo could be a challenge too, just because Donregar is normally in a move beast, but if Cavardo's on the table, you can just plop him 3 hexes over to somewhere not important. So
Yeah, and I
um,
mean, like we called out in the champion pool, and in this warband, we really don't have any movement tricks, so we can't
yeah,
really get ourselves back into position unless your name is Nephany.
yeah. I think that matchups wise, I'd be looking. I'd really like to play this warband into a warband that, one, doesn't have much anti-healing, and two, is relying more on a grindy style, right? I think this warband could go toe to toe with Gruul pretty well, because Gruul warbands tend to not have the burst. Um, and so I'd like to throw Donegar Marcus, Isabel Svetlana on the table and just say you're never killing anything.
Yep. Sure. Cool. Well, that's our first 5 versus 5. We're now going to move on to our final warband where we do a bit of a variant. Now, this could be either doing something a little non-traditional with the God's typical playstyle, or something maybe, I don't know, a little memey where you're just doubling down on something and really sort of taking it to the next level, cranking the knob up to 11 and ripping it off. So we've got our variant here, Eternal Champions. Now, we've only brought one tank in Dunrigar. So you might be wondering about that name, but we'll get there. Bringing in some heavy hitting with Brock, Thorgar, a little bit, and then a whole pile of support in Yasmin, Isabel, Haxa, and Saiyan. What's going on with this warband, Robby?
I think we're just leaning into the healing, right? Like Brock and Thorgar don't technically heal, but everyone else do. Thorgar's brain regen, and Brock,
Technically, they heal.
I guess Brock does technically
If they
heal
get
on
lit
level
on
2.
fire, they do not heal.
Yeah. So yeah, we're trying to keep everyone alive through healing. The lack of a second tank means Donregar might get banned, but I think that's a risk you're willing to take with the other durable models that you've brought in Isabel and Hoxa. I think win condition wise, we're into the soul game. I think Saiyan is probably an unlikely ban target here, and she's a very good soul gazer. She with augury, she is picking up souls with a much lower risk of needing a reroll. And as soon as she gets her second soul, she has access to her banking ability to just send those souls back to the effigy, and there's nothing your opponent can do about it. Is there another avenue of win condition that you'd be looking for other than soul harvesting?
I mean, you've got actually great damage here.
Yeah.
So if I can just murder you off the board, I'm a happy man. We've got our double melee redundancy in Brock and Thorgar, and then a whole lot of flexible damage coming out of Yasmin, Isabel, and Hoxa, including true damage, like from Hoxa's Equilibrium, right? Which is a probably the number one thing you're going to be spending fate on throughout this game. That can be such a huge swing, so make sure you're budgeting for that. But at least here we've got enough like soul harvesting that we think we can probably get our net positive fate going, so that we can be spending that.
Yeah.
Any other
And before
considerations
we
around
get
fate
to,
usage here? You think?
yeah, I mean, we lost Alandir and Nephany from the last warband, right? And those were the two that we pointed to and said these models are going to use fate every turn. So I think we took away 2 fate hungry models and we added back, so net positive on the fate economy thing. Before we skip over board presence, I do want to just give an honorable mention to Hox's Voodoo Idols. That's a great board presence tool. I typically want to get a Voodoo Idol out on turn 1 every game, particularly around those center shrines. Just punish people for coming into them.
Yeah, it can be brutal, and I mean, combining both sort of that board presence and levels and items topic. If your donor guard gets banned, you might want to consider buying a defensive item for someone like Isabel or Hoxa that's going to be on your front line, just to give you a little bit more staying power there and give your healers time to do the work, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean also minding that one of those guys is probably also picking up the restoration potion. So you might be buying 2 items off the effigy on turn 1, which can affect your ability to get up the board. Um, you don't always have to have the biggest beefiest tank be on a shrine. I think Saiyan can go stand on a shrine because people are not going to roll that many dice against her. Uh,
And she just
I think
recently got extended reach on her ranged attacks, so shooting off a shrine can be a great way to make money with her.
Yep. As far as levels and items go, I mean, I think Brock's still kind of commander in chief of level 1 or turn 1 monster kill. He still is going to want that Vorpal Blade. I think the fact that Alandir and Nephany both disappeared from the previous warband is also freeing up some flexibility on items. I love an armor shredder on Thorgar, but to what you just pointed out, I think an agility boots buy on Isabel or Hoxa, or maybe boots stability would be a decent turn one buy, if not later game off a shrine or a monster kill. What do you think? Am I missing an item there? Would you consider like a ring of power on Saiyan now that she's got her extended reach?
That could be really spicy. It's my challenge with that is just saying does have a fair number of things she wants to be doing with her actions, right? Between
Yeah,
Augury and Holy Shield, depending on the matchup, and just moving around, being in position to soul gaze. But like her gun can pop off if she's going into a target with souls on them. Like, she's basically against a target with 2 souls. She's a Thorgar gun, which is kind of bananas. So having that ring of power, yeah, I'd consider it.
yeah. I mean, I think it's going to change how I play the game right now. The way that patch 2.4 added the item buy to centerline shrines, because it was not uncommon for me to just let my opponent have that if I thought I could get a bigger advantage on soul pits. Um, but yeah, if my opponent gives me a centerline shrine with sand, I think I'd consider Ring of Power, maybe Elf Boots. I mean, it seems silly to put Elf Boots on an elf, but uh,
Are all her boots elf boots? Come on.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, she's got dash, right? So now she is moving uh, almost as fast as a self piper. Um, if you count as Mystic Step, I think she would then harvest the same distance away as he can. Would be
Golly.
pretty impressive. So
All right.
um, I'm just spitballing here. I think that would be an interesting thing to try as well.
Cool.
Um, monster hunting is Brock kind of the only answer here? We've
Oh
got
man,
Yasmin
we got
and
so many
actually,
options, so many options
yeah,
here. So like Brock's obvious, tried and true, but Thorgar enraged assault means you're not missing that monster. You're rolling those big dice, and he's got a big old beat stick taking out that Fujasha in 2 hits. Not a problem. Awesome. Yasmin, also a monster hunter, plenty good at contributing there. If you're really going crazy, you could go Ret with Isabel. I don't think you're almost ever going to do that in this particular warband, but it's an option. And then we've
yeah,
got our honorable mention of our dirty tricks with Hoxa. What are our dirty tricks with Hoxa here, Robbie?
yeah. I mean, this is technically true of any model with reach two, but charging a monster and staying at your reach two gives you your opportunity to roll, say, 2 pushes and push the monster to a point where it's going to go towards your opponent rather than Moxa. Or maybe it's as simple as you can charge a monster, push it, and walk away and make that distance be more favorable towards the monster going towards them. So it's a subtle one, but he's potentially more monster control than you might think just first reading his card.
Very cool. Uh, so we've already called out the Donorgar ban as a possibility. Anything else we're sort of worried about getting banned in our warband here?
I think so. In the last warband, you said you were worried about a Brock ban. Is that why you think Thorgar has been included here? I mean, Thorgar is a non-champion. It's the only non-champion in this warband.
I
Do you
mean,
just feel more comfortable with Thorgar over Nephany in terms of the base coverage from Brock getting banned?
I think so. Thorgar really doesn't need any help from anyone else, so he doesn't need fate like Nephany does. He doesn't have like a particular type of target he's bad into. So he's just a very safe inclusion backup for that Brock ban. Um, I would be a little concerned, a little bit at least, concerned about the Saiyan ban, depending on like, did they bring a Krull? Because if like I want to play the fairly durable like grindy game, then I really want to watch out for a warband that can crack that and also steal the souls that I get over time.
Yeah.
So I might be on the lookout for a Saiyan ban personally.
Yeah, I think that you're trying to cover that with Hoxa and Isabel, right? Like if Saiyan gets banned, I think you're running Hoxa Isabel because it's really hard to pick up souls when you just have one Soul Harvest 4 model. Um, yeah, I do think that that's kind of cracking the top too. Donnergar Saiyan um, can't see a world in which Brock or Thorgar are getting banned. Um, Yasmin has been climbing the charts of people hating her. I think that given what we're trying to go for here with healing and preventing burst, Yasmin could also see a ban if your opponent is relying on, Kier or Nefane to deal that damage. Um, I think that matchup wise, you're looking out for warbands that can actually stop your healing, right? So um, I went into Warfare Weekend thinking that Ramona was going to be everywhere, and she's got a very strong healing mechanic at level 2. So I brought Kane, Cavardo, um, and Alir, and so I had anti-healing pretty well covered. I would not want to play against that particular warband with this list. Uh, but favorable matchups would be, I think, similar to the last one. You want to go into like a Gruul or someone who's kind of chipping away. Um, I think that this warband could be week 2, some burst. Uh, so I'm calling up burst, anti-healing. What else do you think this warband could be weak to? Do you think it would respond well to like a Kragnar warband that's spreading out and grabbing the souls before you ever get to them?
I think you've got some options there for counterplay. Saiyan can pull souls off. You've got a decent spread of threat range where Yasmin can chip in, and then you can send either Brock or Thorgar or Donnie and one of the melee guys in to mess them up. Hoxa can control board space with those voodoo idols. Obviously not on a place, but still good for advances. Um, but I don't know. I think you might be overselling the anti-healing thing because I don't think we've mentioned it yet, but this warband has 4 different heroes that can either prevent or remove conditions. And in particular, the one we're
Right.
going to care about is burn primarily, but
Right.
then also burst, right? If you can block Rakir from putting poison on someone, he can't toxin. Where you've got, Yasmin's ability to do that. Isabel obviously can cleanse things off. Hoxa's resistance idol at level 2, and Saiyan's holy shield. So I think actually this warband, while it does lean on healing more than res than our last one,
Yeah.
has a lot of tools to ensure you do get to keep on healing versus the previous one.
Yeah. I mean, mortal wounds is the only one that really you truly have to worry about. I think that there's an element of like tricksiness that this warband is not bringing, right? So a lot of your healing that you're talking about is, I think, related to proximity of models between Hox's healing idol and Saiyan's Holy Aura, I believe it's called, where she activates and heals. Yasmin's leech granting. So I'd be a little worried about maybe Cavardo scalpeling something out here. Um, that could be a way to try and tackle this warband.
That's fair. I feel like this warband maybe is a little bit more complex to play than the previous one. A lot to consider. You don't have
Yeah,
quite the same durability to just sort of rely on to carry you through the game. So you're really going to have to make the most out of this wide variety of heroes that you've brought to the table to maximize. But I think you could have a lot of fun with this play style too.
yeah. I think that the things that we were noting earlier as freeing up Fate economy, that we lost were Alanir and Ephany, and this warband is going to struggle to do the things that they were doing. Right? It's you're not going to be able to reach out and touch people with your high flying elf lightsaber lady, or without the sniping elf in Alan. So
Cool. But
just
if
worth
you want
calling
to,
out the
if you want to,
differences that we've created for ourselves.
yeah. I think this one, if you want to drive a Tomas player mad, maybe this is a one to try out. All right,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Rakir's gonna have a bad time. Don't ban Rakir because he's probably just gonna get dropped.
Yeah. So that's our 3 sample war bands and wraps up our overview of Ista. All in all, we think she's got just a very solid, reliable set of divine gifts, durable champion pool that really doesn't have a ton of gaps in it. You might consider some movement tricks and utility. But yeah, you may have an opportunity as you get reps in with Ista to master getting the most out of keeping your heroes alive and that effigy power and avatar bonus, knowing when to put the pedal to the metal and use that fly and nimble offensively versus being able to use it to make sure you're just getting to back up, not take parting blows, and live to fight another day. So, with that, any closing thoughts on Ista here, Robby?
Yeah, I mean, I just think Ista's got a great theme, right? Like it, as long as you're into it, right? If you like the good guys, thematically, I think the champion pool just they pretty much all make sense here, right? There's no demons, there's no undead. Uh, I think it just all gels really well together. So
Very nice. Well, cool. We're going to wrap it up here. Please look out to upcoming videos. We'll likely do Krognar next. Keep on the starter box theme. If you want to dive in more into the dojo, feel free to join the Judgement Discord. I'll drop a link into the comments, or sorry, the description, so that you can follow that there. And there's lots of activity there. You can even get online games in, either on Vassal or there's a now a tabletop simulator mod for Judgement that you can get games in on. So lots of good opportunities. Let us know what you think about Ista. Did we miss anything? Are we way off on anything? Drop it into the comments. But with that, we'll sign off and see you next time with our next video. Once again, thanks, Robby, for coming on. It's been great to have you.
yeah, thanks.
All right. See you around.